There's a stray kitty. See if she likes it when I read. Okay, page 30. The developer and industrialist know that the end of unlimited exploitation is near and the battle now won. So they build and overlay at an even more frantic pace to grab the last air, water, and land from farmers who are left. Did I really read this far? Valley fever. Okay, page 29, the last paragraph, just because. We few romantic and autochthonous natives of the valley are in a race that we cannot win between land farmed and land paved. Our ancestors beat back the wild to give us these farms. We of a lesser breed were beaten back by new men to give them up. We battle the encroaching suburb. Our grandfathers in their youth once fought hunger and typhoid. Both of us have received $4 a box for plums. The developer and industrialist know that the end of unlimited exploitation is near and the battle now won. So they build and overlay at an even more frantic pace to grab the last air, water, and land from farmers who are left, before nature changes the rules of the game and we are all but another Los Angeles. When we are one megalopolis between the mountains and the 99 freeway, it will be rather difficult to find a peach orchard to bulldoze under, an aquifer to suck dry, or a farmer to buy out. Then beware, you remaining pristine valleys elsewhere. It will be a more difficult task for the developer and speculator to make a lot of money when the entire valley corridor is cement, asphalt, and satellite dishes, with only a few skipped lots in the mess. Just a tessera or two missing from this bad Roman mosaic. And we will wonder why we have become a different people. Agriculture will be doomed here in 50 years, we are told by the more honest futurists, when the air, water, and housing sprawl of our valley will finally turn traitor on us. Farms that survive will be rural atolls in an unending suburban sea. After all, in the next century, we will have well over 15 million suburbanites between Sacramento and Bakersfield. In short, we who came of age in the generation between 1970 and the present, for all our energy, work, and suffering, for all those unknown and little heralded sacrifices and tragedies up on the scaffold, on the roof, and in the trench, have almost ruined in little more than 25 years what it took a century to build, and we have called that subversion a great success. And if success means the greatest number of people in the history of this valley well fed and housed, it surely is a triumph. Land that once fed millions now houses and employs and still feeds millions more. If you want to come over here, kitty. She doesn't. She might have mange or mites. Anyway. She's had food and water. She's a stray. She comes occasionally. Give our frenzied cohort its due. There was muscle and there was sweat involved in these last 2 decades to give us our malls, fast food drive-thrus, and 3-bedroom tract houses. There is courage and there is sacrifice among those whose sinews helped to ruin this valley. Unknown, but noble pavers, cement workers, roofers, and carpenters, who died mostly sore and poor. Nothing in this state's history, not the original immigration from Mexico, nor the trek of thousands from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, can rival the sheer rapidity and totality of what my generation did to the San Joaquin Valley's landscape. The adulteration of our soil, sky, and aquifer gave us bountiful housing, entertainment, and people. What then have we lost? Irrigated valleys, whose rich loams stretch out on flat plains, where water in the mountains above is only 30 miles away and gravity fed, where neither hurricane nor ice intrude, are not common conditions on this earth. Perhaps in Chile or South Africa, and maybe in Western Asia Minor and Southern Europe, such oases are found. But they are still smaller there and less opulent, and rarely do their inhabitants have the freedom to realize the potential bounty of the natural treasure they have found. The San Joaquin Valley of California is a natural slip, an enormous mistake of the gods, who rarely give farming man so much natural bounty, so much dormant power to sprout from the once countryside of scrub. 250 crops now produce $13 billion worth of food every year. Its inhabitants, too, are historical oddities, refugees from every agricultural area in the world: China, Japan, Europe, India, Armenia, who, as Mr. Crevecoeur saw, fled here under the Aegis, A-E-G-I-S, Aegis, I want to say Aegis, of liberty, to enact, without coercion, their own particular philosophy of the growing of food. In human terms, we are the world's receptacle of unappreciated farming genius, let loose in the finest combination of earth, water, air, and heat on the planet. What a fertile valley we have been and shall not be again. They are now forgotten and neglected, those giants who had so much faith in themselves and so much courage before the terrible wages of their sacrifice. As Mr. Crevecoeur said, is there no credit to be given to these first cultivators, who by their sweat, their toil, and their perseverance have come over a sea of 3,000 miles to till a new soil? Why and how, then, did we do such things to this basin of greenery? I had always thought that our snowpack in the mountains to the east, the natural fertility of the soil, the extended and cloudless growing season, the presence of a capable and hard-working population would confine urban growth. Such largesse assuredly would convince even the most grasping not to ruin those precious ingredients of irrigated agrarianism that existed nowhere else in the world. Anyone knew you do not uproot a rare 30-ton to the acre peach orchard for one more Motel 6. Anyone should have known that the local mega casino, sprung from a vineyard, now itself bankrupt and empty, was a bad trade-off in the use of land. The cat? Oh, she did not leave, she did move. Kitty, kitty. Cheap food, cheap housing, cheap transport can also give us cheap people. To drive into a once agrarian backwater like Selma now is to witness the result of this radical life after dusk, millions of dollars in material goods purchased on credit by those who have no money and no idea what to make of their third cars, pagers, cell phones, and assorted sundries, a populace that is far better clothed, fed, and tended to, and more ignorant, dangerous, and unhappy than 4 decades ago. We have now become Mr. Gibbon's crowds without company, dissipation without pleasure. My grandfather knew better. The third of 6 generations to live in this house, born here in 1890, he was not beaten down by the past century of wars and depression. Instead, typically so, he used to worry about other more insidious enemies to come after his demise. Why, I tell you, this is God's country, not a place like it in the world. In some time, someone's going to find out about it. God help you kids when they do. They did. Our natural advantages turned out to serve even better those who would not farm, those who saw this valley's future as a bustling metropolis of teeming urbanites, not a backwater agrarian refuge. These commercialists, inventive and audacious folk all, were not bothered by our reputation for rusticity and yokalism. They welcomed the absence of symphonies and ballets and museums of the first rank in Fresno and Bakersfield. As purveyors of inanimate capital, the clever investors rather liked our repute as the Theban dullards of California. They were not snobs at all. They were, to be honest, real Democrats of old who wished to people this valley to survey it and knew there were few to stop them, and few did. Unlike us, these anti-agrarians were not trusting with nose to the ground. They knew how to acquire what was once ours and expand upon what they took. They knew that few farmers would buy out their failed plants and new, soon to be slums to rip up concrete and replant orchards. Successful or otherwise, their work remains forever. Ours will not. Even in defeat and bankruptcy, the commercial developer wins the race to replace farmland, rip up a vineyard, and farming ceases for all time to come. Abandon an unneeded and overrun apartment complex, and a vacant parking lot, crumbling storage yard, where weed-infested asphalt, not an orchard, takes its place. In this lifetime, I have never seen a fruit tree or vine replanted on deserted and unwanted commercial real estate, the soil once more to be set free from its veneer of asphalt. Our local Walmart, or what is left of Walmart, will be here in 100 years. The farmland outside my front door will not be. So the developers adore this valley, which they say was better for their purposes all along. It is easy to see why. Page 34. First, our valley is dry and hot. Thus, it is as good a place to keep roads, trains, and airways open as it is to dry raisins. You can hammer, fabricate, and nail shingles almost every day of the year, as well as prune or disc. No one is barricaded from work by the snow. Tornadoes do not destroy the box plant, just as they have not uprooted orchards. Earthquakes. She's still there. Earthquakes are but slight tremors beneath our valley's cushion of loam, shaking neither studs nor barns. The cold does not put welders into depression or prompt one drink too many, as it has not killed vineyards or ruined peach trees. Our university growth institutes confirmed to the potential developer that there are 50 more days here of working weather than at his present abode. As relish, they add that 1 acre of asphalt and aluminum can sprout more jobs than can 10 of trees and vines, and it can, and often with less water too. They do not always lie. I have learned a rule in America: wherever family farms thrive, be it due to culture or climate, suburban development will follow them. Its corollary is just as valid. Wherever corporate, agriculture, industry, or urbanism is in full swing, new residents will stay away. There is something wonderful for Americans in that moment of transition from farmland to city wasteland. Agriculture's evaporation gives a final brief moment of stability, greenery, and values that we all savor before we ruin it. It is savvy business for developers to have backyards border walnut orchards to ensure vineyards are nearby the new tracks, to lure suburbanites with promises of peach trees and grapes but a mile from their door. Developers prefer not to develop next to other developers, and developers sometimes imagine that they might live in their own developments. Weather is not the valley's only attractive enticement for the forge of the modern-day Vulcan. Things are cheap here: food, fiber, and fuel. We grow every type of comestible, billions worth, and more each year. Our fruits and vegetables feed the East Coast. We are the world's richest cotton and dairy-producing centers. Grain, hay, and rice are grown at higher per-acre ratios than anywhere in the world, and there is still oil near Coalinga and Bakersfield. In other words, the cost of doing business near Fresno, eating, burning gas, traveling to and fro, is for a while longer inexpensive. We supply our own and ship the natural and man-made surplus to you. We are the last cheap place in California. We do everything first rate, and that ensures we will soon do none of it, as each day acres of trees and vines give way to houses and roads, the water a little scarcer, the air a little dirtier, the people a little more numerous and unhappy. It makes sense for the Los Angeles or San Francisco captain of industry to bring down his plant or business to where his employees can at least afford to live on his cheaper wages for a while longer. Vineyard Knolls, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, fenced and landscaped, starting in the low 70s. HUD financing available. The signs now proclaim in flat, uprooted vineyards throughout the valley. Next year or so, 170 such homes are to be zoned to be planted a mile from this farmhouse. Dwellings that are clean, cheap, well built, and no doubt already sold. They and the food for less and pay less. Down the road are as egalitarian as anything that came out of old Athens. No wise man in California has ever said, "Pave over no more farmland, and your cities shall once again thrive." Only then might our endless cycle of build, abandon, and move on cease. It really would work, this idea of a green belt around a vertical city with population and growth curtailed. Downtown real estate would regain value. Vacant lots in town would be prized. Police, fire, and other municipal services would no longer be stretched, and the citizenry would deal with, rather than flee from, the nightmare of the American city. If we could but pave over no more farmland. Period. But that tonic is, once again, worse than the malady, for it is not altogether free and equal. Who is to say I can't have a yard? Who gets to live there while I'm over here? The state has located most of its new prisons here. There is a rationale to those moves as well. We have many unemployed but conservative workers who, when given the chance, do guard well, if not at times a tad too brutally. We have flat, empty land that is congenial to walls, wire, and cement. And we have many criminals who can make the trip short from crime to court to sell. And we are largely free of the Sierra Club, the Environmental Defense Fund, and Nature Conservancy. Those northerners still ask bothersome questions before concrete is poured and do not value jobs that accrue from the underbelly of modern urban life. We, who a century ago dammed the Sierra streams without a blink to beautify the valley, can hardly now hesitate to bulldoze vineyards. Introspection and vacillation are just not in us, even if we are now demolishing rather than creating agrarianism. I suppose you on the left will say that we, century-long reckless exploiters of the original wild, are getting what we deserve. And you would be right. Each little farming community of this eastern corridor of the valley now has an industrial park and a chamber of commerce recruitment team whose job is to snag more suburban light industry, expanding the tax base and retailing more service sector jobs that will ruin their downtowns, deracinate their blinkered society, cloud their air, and pave over their orchards. Years after their success, for some reason those more honest hucksters at the brink of the abyss are known to confess, in moments of religiosity, or morose at their retirement dinners, or perhaps deranged and cancer-ridden at their final interviews to the local weekly. I guess we didn't quite realize that we more or less made a whole new town out there by the freeway, and an uglier one than the one we already had at that. Then these Cassandras die. Only the most shameless of the petty millionaires, like one local baron still in his prime at 50, boasts of their destroyed vineyards and newly arisen edge cities. Ironic it is that the only real expanse of uninterrupted greenery left in central California comprises the cotton, tomato, and rice fields of the west side of the San Joaquin, the corporate side of the valley, between the Coast Range, mountains, and the 99 freeway. There the arid land ranges from 5,000 to 30,000 acre blocks. Some agribusiness conglomerates now control 50,000 acres and more. The company towns have no middle classes. Their massive sheds are empty of their land barons, who live as absentees in the gated estates of Fresno. The growing salinization, leached selenium, and general absence of anything planted taller than fodder all ensure that no one wishes to move there. Some migratory birds from their wastewater artificial ponds have one wing. Others sometimes flop about with 3 feet. Some are found with 2 bills. Imported irrigated water percolates no more than 10 to 20 feet below the surface and then becomes salty and foul. Cotton defoliant in autumn sickens even the car bound on the freeway. And food grows there still in abundance. To be fair to those magnates, you would not live there either, even if you owned it all. The earlier Spanish and American annalists told us not to plant there, told us it was a vast salt flat beneath the surface that blocked drainage, told us that there was no water to be had. They were right, yet those farms thrive when we cannot. The federal government brought ditches from the north to pump the water in, and now it must bring them a sewer to the sea to drain the miasma out. Don't see her. The corporate West Side survives pristine due to its distortion and deformity of agriculture. We, the far better culture to the east, 30 miles away, perish for the beauty and humanity of our trees and vines. There is a reason, after all, why few Greeks wanted to live in the expansive and royal pastures of horse-rearing Thessaly, why most instead preferred the agrarian patchwork of Argos and Attica. My point? The destruction of agrarianism, which has a certain logic in economic terms, cheap, instantaneous food on demand from great distances requires vertical integration and enormous capital, makes no sense at all in its aesthetic or cultural ramifications. Our genius in America can provide the entire planet with all the food, goods, safety, schlock, culture, and hygiene at once, with everything except how to employ that bounty so that we are better, not worse, souls for our success. That's page 38, top of it.